the first aspect we want to show you is how someone can come into ServiceNow and request access for themselves, or maybe request access for members of their team. And so we've given folks the ability to come right here to our service portal and given them a couple buttons, one to manage their own access, one to manage their team. And when we click in here, we now are in the SailPoint access request portal, where we can start by selecting our users. So along the left-hand side is the high-level process that we'll be following to determine which access needs to be provisioned or deprovisioned for folks within our organization. I've been given permissions to request access on behalf of others. That's something you can give folks. So if they're managing a team or a line of business and they need the ability to request access on behalf of others, they can do that. Quickly, an alternative view is this one, and this is for a regular employee. They are able to come in and request access for themselves. So they're not going to be able to see every employee and see what access they have assigned. They're only going to see their world, unless you've given them kind of that manager level role to say, you're in charge of people. You need to be able to come in and request access on their behalf. So we're gonna select a couple people. The nice thing is you can select more than one person at a time. So I'm gonna select Aline, and I'm also gonna select Alan. And what's nice about this one for Alan is we can see that Benjamin here is listed as the manager of Alan. When we request access for Alan, Benjamin, as his manager, is going to get a approval request through ServiceNow to determine whether that access should be provisioned. So we'll progress here and we're going to select our access. But the nice thing is this becomes the single pane of glass and the one-stop shop for access and approval through ServiceNow. And as Teresa mentioned earlier, there's a lot of mobile capabilities. So folks are able to do that on the go from their phones without having to log into the system to grant that approval. So for our client, their big concern was folks needing to be remote, especially with the COVID-19 requirements for people to be out of the office and working from home. There was the need to provision VPN access. So someone could come in here, select the individuals on their team that they know need access, Aline and Alan in this instance, and search for that access that they need. So we look for VPN access, and we see here there's a group that if they're granted access, we'll make them allow them to have VPN access to the administrator or to the organization. So we go ahead and click that, and there's a little green checkbox and it lit up to signify that that's been selected. And we can click the next button, and this is the review and submit stage, the final of our 3 steps. And we can see that there are 2 requests that we'll be filing. The first is for Aline to add access to VPN, and the second, Alan, to add access. The nice thing is we have the ability to leave a comment if we need to justify why possibly someone needs this. And so maybe we say Aline is now a remote worker due to COVID-19. So we're able to leave comments as to why we're requesting this access. We can also put a start and end date so that maybe we need this access immediately, and in 2 months' time, we'll evaluate maybe at the end of August whether she needs to continue to have that access. Allows us to manage some of the licensing aspects. Maybe our VPN tenant has certain licenses, and so we're able to request that for periods of time. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now the last step here is to submit. And when we do, a few things will happen. The first is it's going to create a approval request for Alan, and Benjamin would get that email. And the second is because Aline does not have a manager designated, that she would have this access provisioned without the need for further approval. So we'll go ahead and submit that. And we'll show you what this looks like on the SailPoint side in a moment, but Arlene, maybe you want to speak about, kind of.
Yeah. As part of our consulting expertise, we usually make minor adjustments to the software to tailor it to our clients' needs. We're very sensitive to user experience, so we do tend to change the labels and some wording here and there to make the integration even more intuitive. As well, I don't know if you noticed it, but Jay actually added some buttons in ServiceNow portal, and it was subtle. Maybe it just went by fast, but It was for better user experience. We can also do some filtering, filtered viewing so that users will only see what they're allowed to see.
So there are those buttons, Arlene. So they're right there on the service portal when they come. And this can be configured to meet the look and feel that the organization desires, but we like to try and make that immediately obvious for folks so they don't have to search for it. So it's a fairly seamless and painless process.
And Jay, oftentimes many organizations have existing portals already, so there's the ability to build some integrations in there. And I think similarly, we have some folks, from a UI, UX perspective, who oftentimes collaborate in building these portals to make sure that there's a consistent and positive user experience, so that everyone knows, where to go for the right answers and how to get what they need action quickly.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that can be embedded in an existing portal. It can be a new portal, and we can involve folks from our user experience team to help them, get the look and feel that they're after. So while Arlene was speaking, you may have seen there were a couple green banners that popped up, and they were to let us know that the request has been submitted. So there's now a request in ServiceNow that we can track to see what is the status of that. Additionally, we're going to jump over to look at what SailPoint looks like, just to show you that it's creating those requests. And so we can see in here that there's a request for a lien today on 6/24, and that is in the process of being provisioned as we speak. So it really is a fairly instantaneous connection between SailPoint and ServiceNow, so that there's no delay in adding or what is oftentimes more critical, removing access. In that regard, that takes us to our second little vignette that we wanted to discuss. The business was very concerned about the furloughs and all of the access provisioning and removal activities that were occurring. And to that end, we helped our client pull in information from SailPoint into ServiceNow to provide a high-level overview dashboard like the one we have here, as well as inform some of the compliance and risk management activities that the organization had going on. Just to kind of orient you as to what we have here on the screen, along the top we have high-level counts in terms of the number of attestations that are being performed. As these furloughs were occurring, we asked the managers to confirm that folks still needed access. We had a couple business units that were unable to have folks out for large chunks of time, so they cut them down to a more of a part-time role, and in doing so, there were some access they needed to keep and others they didn't. So we ran an attestation campaign to make sure that folks were retaining the access necessary. But we also had some requests for access termination, folks who were leaving the organization, maybe access that was no longer needed. And those requests either completed directly through SailPoint as part of a connector to another system, or through ServiceNow's ability to send tasks for manual access revocation. So, as part of that last mile provisioning and deprovisioning, we're able to track those requests and tasks in ServiceNow. Along the right-hand side, we're able to keep track of those that are pending. So we know there are 5 attestations that we're waiting for from the business, and there's 1 access termination that's still in process. Here in the middle row, we're able to keep track of kind of that average time to complete. So using ServiceNow's task capabilities, we're able to track how long these requests take. Additionally, we're able to set an SLA in terms of how long we expect this to take, and track what the SLA percentage is for both our attestation and certification tasks, as well as some of those access revocation tasks, and able to keep track of that. You may notice that there's a date here, June 23, as well as a percentage change. Over time, as the numbers update in the system, as these activities are performed, we'll see these numbers go up and down day to day. And as they do, we'll be able to see, wow, our time for these attestation and certification requests is going up, and maybe our SLA percentage when it comes to access termination starts to go up as well. And one of those is obviously good, and the other one not nearly as good. But the last piece in terms of pulling the data into ServiceNow and GRC platform relates to this bottom report. And so just to orient you here on the left column, there are different risk categories, different high-level buckets of risk. And so this first one here is around identity and access management, attestation, and certification of accounts. So the inherent risk to the organization if we didn't have our SailPoint process, if we didn't have the manual last mile revocation, the attestation process, a very high risk. It was a 4 out of 5. Given all that we have from a control perspective, that residual risk is low. And so we're able to see that we're making movement in these different areas of risk. This is something we typically build out as part of our GRC implementation, and we can source data to pull into these risk ratings from various parts of the system. We can look at risk assessments that are maybe being performed. We can do control attestations to folks who maybe own processes and functions and the like. And we can do any type of security incidents or any type of issues management processes. And we can also look at the data being gathered from the SailPoint integration that our client implemented. So using all the information available, we're starting to get a very real-time understanding of where risk lies within the organization, and in this instance, how it relates to identity and access management.
Yeah, this ties back to what I said earlier, where what David said in his earlier slides, the 3 types of integrations with ServiceNow and SailPoint. We extended it even further so that reports and artifacts in SailPoint are written back to ServiceNow to enrich these kinds of dashboards. And so you've got a more complete picture of your KPIs, your KRIs, and it extends it all the way to the end.
And maybe just kind of 2 additional thoughts, in that the kind of the 4 risk areas you're seeing here, these are the ones that relate to identity and access management. This is part of a wider framework and a wider taxonomy, if you will. So I imagine, you have a series of risk register items and requirements, perhaps your own taxonomy, maybe you're leveraging agiles. This is just a subset of this, and this fits into an overall IT risk management and enterprise risk management framework. So there's the ability to slice that specifically for identity, but then roll this up into that wider framework. And I think the second point here that I wanted to make sure we made, and I know both Jay and Arlene spoke about it, is that we are now kind of on the precipice of getting into the ability to get into some continuous monitoring and integration activities, which are really exciting for a lot of folks. So we run in the GRC practice many projects where we are rating inherent and residual risk, and oftentimes that residual risk is influenced by manual activities. So either just a physical manual kind of flip of the switch, we think it's high, medium, or low, whether it's through manual control testing techniques. Again, that can be done in ServiceNow, but again, it's requiring a level of interaction in order to update those. But through this integration and being able to leverage the data coming from SailPoint, we're able to then wire that in here so that you are automatically being able to update and indicate the various residual risk ratings, that you see here. So, this is kind of that one step towards, what people think is the holy grail and kind of utopia of being able to get some of those, that continuous monitoring data to then automatically update things like residual risk.
Yeah, and maybe just one last point on that, Brian, is that through this integration, it limits the requests that folks who are performing these processes, the folks who are part of these identity teams, get from the compliance folks and from the risk folks and from the audit folks who are using ServiceNow GRC, because they have that information already. It's brought over into ServiceNow. They can reference it. They can connect that to a control to get kind of continuous monitoring as to whether they're compliant or not, and really lessens the burden on folks to provide evidence for every single assessment and every single audit and every single request. So the last little vignette we want to show relates to our vendors and the dislocated supply chain. So we're looking here at a vendor risk dashboard that was built specifically for risk assessments that our client was performing as it related to COVID-19. So in addition to their regular vendor risk management program and the due diligence they perform, they started to perform a more frequent COVID-19 centric risk assessment that looked to identify the risk of bankruptcy amongst their vendors, any operational difficulties that may be impacting, and then any risk that they may be unable to deliver any product services in the agreed upon time frame. So through this assessment, our client recognized that there was a vendor that was a critical supplier that had a very high delivery risk. As part of that, they decided to take action and diversify the supply chain, look to get an additional supplier in place. So for our example, that was what we're calling vendor XYZ Incorporated. So as part of their risk assessment, and they had a very high risk as it related to delivery. So as part of an integration that we built with between SailPoint and ServiceNow, they're able to use the vendor risk management solution as the source of truth for vendor identities. And it allows them to know when we offboard a vendor, when we terminate our relationship with them, who are our vendor contacts that need their access revoked. And so down below, as part of the ServiceNow vendor risk management solution, we're able to keep track of who may have access to our systems. And so if we offboard this vendor and click the button up here in the top right, trigger the steps that need to occur to make sure that we remove access to these vendor accounts. Additionally, we would know now that any of our folks who maybe have access to vendor systems need to have their access removed as well, because we are no longer doing business with this supplier. So, in this example, this was a supplier of medical supplies, and it was from a variety of different manufacturers that went through this supplier, and folks who maybe have access to the vendor system have the ability to request supplies on behalf of our organization. So obviously, as we are no longer doing business with them, that's something that we would want to disallow. And so, in short, the integration between vendor risk management and SailPoint, vastly improved the experience for all involved, not only for the folks who need to request that access be terminated, but also for the vendors, because now they're able to come in through vendor risk management and manage their team. They're able to say, Bob Smith is one of the folks from us who maybe needs access. And so you're able to have him added to the list here as vendor contact. And then Bob would now be selectable in our access portal, whereby he could potentially have access assigned.